Bez Hashem, today's daf is daf Tezvav. We're going to begin from daf Yudalet Amud Beis by the Mishnah. Okay, here's the Mishnah. Okay, let's make it big. A very, very interesting, easy daf again, but it's a Mishnah that needs explanation. The Mishnah begins: Koinim, it should be usher to me like a carbon, shani yashin, my sleep. In other words, he's saying my sleep should be usher. So he doesn't want to sleep. Or shani medaber, he says my speech should be usher, like a carbon. Shani, or he says my walking should be usher like a carbon. Kainim is a nickname for a carbon. So the l'chayra, this should not be a neder. Right away, you could say it should not be a neder because it's something there's no object over here. Sleeping, speaking, and walking is not an object, and we need by neder to take effect on an object. So we'll see about that. Then the Mishnah said, a man is angry at his wife. So he says, a man says to his wife, Koinim shani misham sheikh. I make a neder like that about our relation, that we're not going to have relations, that the relations that we have are also to me. So he says, marital relations is also to me. So the Mishnah the Mishnah ends off that you're not allowed to, that there is a neder over here. Now, right away, you could ask a question. How could somebody tell his wife that I'm not going to have marital relations with you? I mean, he's mechayiv to have marital relations. He has to be with his wife. So we're going to discuss that in the Gemara. And also, this harezeh b'lo yachel devari is an unusual way to say that it's a neder. Mishnah should say harezeh aser. That would be the simple way to say the Mishnah. But the Mishnah uses the expression harezeh b'lo yachel devari. So very often, the way the Gemara goes around explaining the Mishnah, the Gemara starts off with a related machlokes and then gets to the subject of our Mishnah. Itma, we learned. This is the Bryce. This is a teaching of a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rab, and Rav Nachman. A man says, Koinim eini b'sheina hayom. He says, I ask myself to sleep today on condition, im isha l'mochar. If I sleep tomorrow, then I'm not allowed to sleep today. So now he's like in a bind. You have today and tomorrow. So he says, I'm not going to sleep today. I ask myself to sleep today if I'm going to sleep tomorrow. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, so Rav Yehuda said, Al yishan hayoim, don't sleep today. Why? Shema yishan l'mochar, because maybe you sleep tomorrow. If you sleep tomorrow, turns out that when you slept today, you did it be'isser, because you had a neder on yourself. So he's telling you as a precaution, don't sleep at all today, because maybe you'll sleep tomorrow. Rav Nachman says, Yishan hayom, you can sleep today. Now he has a problem, because tomorrow he has to make sure he doesn't sleep, because if he sleeps tomorrow, he keeps the condition, and he makes the condition valid, and therefore effectuating a neder on the day before that he was not supposed to sleep. So then Rav Nachman says, Yishan, you could sleep today. V'loy chashinin, I'm not concerned, Shema Yishan l'mochar, that you're going to sleep tomorrow. He'll remember that if he sleeps tomorrow, he's going to have did an avera the day before. So therefore, I'm not worried about that. So he'll be very careful not to sleep tomorrow, and we let him do that. So that's a very fundamental, amazing machlokes, whether a person has to think about the morrow or not. So the Gemara says, Umayda Rabbi Yehuda would agree, but if someone says in the opposite scenario, the conditions today, I make myself usher to sleep tomorrow you're not allowed to sleep, in Ishan Hayoim, if I sleep today. So today is the condition, and tomorrow is the Isser. So then, he sleeps today, right? He sleeps today. Really, then tomorrow he's not allowed to sleep. Rabbi Yehuda says you can sleep today, no problem. Tomorrow you'll be careful not to fall asleep. Now, what is the difference? Why in one scenario, Rabbi Yehuda says tomorrow we're concerned he might fall asleep. And in the second scenario, we say that Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he'll be careful not to fall asleep. That depends what tomorrow is. If tomorrow is the Isser, right? If tomorrow is the Isser, then, like in the second case, tomorrow I should be also to sleep if I sleep today. So he knows when tomorrow comes, every second, he's going to make sure not to fall asleep, because if he falls asleep, that would be the Isser. So then he'll be careful not to fall asleep. But if the Isser was the day before, but the condition of that Isser was tomorrow, that if he sleeps the next day, so here, then the person's not going to be so careful. He might sleep tomorrow and effectuating an Isser that he slept the day before. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda will say that in that scenario, don't bring yourself into a problem where you might sleep tomorrow. That's what the Gemara says on Daf Tazvav Amarav. Ki loy mizdaher. When is a person not concerned that he's going to fall asleep? But tonight, if tomorrow is the tonight of what you slept of the Isser of the first day, you're saying I have a neder not to sleep on day one, and the tonight if I sleep on day two. So we are concerned that if you sleep on day one and the tonight, the day comes day two, you're going to forget you're going to sleep anyway, because at tonight there's no Isser to sleep on day two. The Isser will retroactively make it Isser that you did an Aveira on day one. So he's not going to be so careful. But if there's an Isser on day two, in other words, the condition was day one. If I sleep on day one, then I'll be Isser on day two. Well, you slept on day one. I know Rabbi Yehuda would agree that now that you know that there's an Isser to sleep on day two, because the condition was met on day one. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says in that scenario, a person would be very careful not to sleep on day two. So that's the machlokes. Now the Gemara goes now back to our Mishnah to explain our Mishnah and answer all the questions we had on our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, Tnan, we learned in our Mishnah, Koinem sha'ani yashan, right? A person, Koinem sha'ani yashan. I make a neder that I'm not going to sleep. Or shani mahalef, I'm not going to walk. Shani medaber, I'm not going to speak. So the Gemara asks, hey chidami, what's the case? What's the scenario that you can make such a neder? I'm not going to sleep. Shani yoshan, make a neder that I'm not going to sleep. Mi haben nidra, is that called a neder? How could you make a neder on something it's not an object? It's an abstract concept: sleeping, walking, talking. But now we learned in the Mishnah, choyme b'shvuos. Shvuos has more of a severity over Nedarim. Shaha Shvuos chalis. Shvuos take effect al davar sheyesh by mamish on abstract things like sleeping. Al davar sheyesh by mamish on an object. Al davar sheyesh by mamish on something that's abstract. Mashein came ben Nedarim. V'sheinu davar sheyesh by mamish. Neder would not take effect on something that's abstract. That's no mamish. That's not an object. And sleeping is not an object. So how does our Mishnah say that whoever says koinim shani yashan, that's called a good neder? That doesn't make sense. The Mishnah makes no sense. Ella, what you have to read into the Mishnah, the Amar, he said koinim eine b'shena. I make a neder that my eyes should be asa for me to sleep. And then the Mishnah says that you could be, if you fall asleep, you're over your neder. That's what it means. It's a little strange. So the Gemara just right away says that if you made a neder that I aser my eyes from ever falling asleep, it's not even a neder, because a neder, it's impossible for you to keep such a neder, and therefore it's a neder shav. It doesn't take effect. Neder takes effect only if it's possible to keep, but here it's impossible to keep. You see, unlike, so the Gemara says like this, if you didn't give an amount of time, how long you're not going to sleep for, Mishafkina, is there going to be an Isser? We're going to wait till he be over the Isser Bal Yacher. He'll never be over the Isser Bal Yacher, because there's no violation over here, because there's no neder. The only time there would be a violation if you say like this, Rabbi Yochanan said, Shavua shlo ishan shloishim yomim. Man says, I swear, I'm not going to sleep for 3 days. Malchus. Here you would give Malchus. Why? Right away. Because by Shvua, there's a concept called Shvua Shav, saying I swear to the Eibishter's name for no reason, for nothing. So there's a concept of making a false Shvua, a invalid Shvua, an impossible Shvua. There, by Shvua, you get Malchus. V'yashin la'alter, you can't, because you go to sleep right away, because it's an impossible thing to stay up for 3 days. So therefore, back to our Mishnah. If our Mishnah is talking about, you said, I make a neder, I'm never going to sleep, my eyes should never sleep, I ask my eyes from sleeping, there's no neder over there. So that's not the shot in the Mishnah. So the Gemara goes and says like this. Our Mishnah is talking about in a similar case. Eller, the Amar, a man said, Koinim eine b'sheina l'machar, I answer my eyes from sleeping tomorrow. So tomorrow is the Isser, im ishan hayoim, if I sleep today. And the Mishnah says, Harei zeh b'lo yachel devarai, right? He is b'lo yachel devarai. What does that mean? That means, the Mishnah probably means to say is that we don't let him sleep today. The condition is today on day one. The Isser is on day two. And the Mishnah says, Harei zeh b'lo yachel devarai. If he would be b'lo yachel devarai means that there's a problem that he could be over by yachel devarai. If he would sleep today, then he might sleep tomorrow. So we don't allow him to sleep today. So the Gemara says, if that's the meaning of our Mishnah, ha'amrit, you just got through saying, kol be'isurim mizdaher. If the Isser is on tomorrow and the condition is today, so then we would let him sleep today. Even Rabbi Yehuda, who's more strict, would agree that that scenario where the condition is today and the Isser would be tomorrow, you would be allowed to sleep today, because tomorrow comes, even if you slept today and you kept the condition, you'll make sure not to fall asleep tomorrow. So what does the Mishnah mean? That you were over bal yachal devari. Or what is the Mishnah talking about? Ella pshita, the Gemara says it's simple, that the only way to learn pshat in our Mishnah, a very odd Mishnah, and that our Mishnah is exactly this scenario. The Amar, a man said, Koinim eine b'sheina hayoim. I asked him, I sleep today, im ishan l'mochar, if I sleep tomorrow. Now, so to think about what the Mishnah is saying. This is what the Mishnah is saying. A man says, I answer myself to sleep today, if I will sleep tomorrow. So therefore, we tell him that, look, if you would sleep today, right? If you would sleep today, right? Then tomorrow you got to be careful not to sleep, because if you will sleep tomorrow, you will be over the Isser of Bal Yachal Devari today. And that's Mishnah said. The Mishnah says, let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah will say, make sure if a man says, I ask him I sleep today, if I sleep tomorrow, then make sure if you would sleep today, then make sure not to sleep tomorrow, because if you would, you'll be over the Isra of Layachal Devarim. So that's how exactly our Mishnah. The only thing is that this is a knockout blow to Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda says you're not allowed to sleep today. And our Mishnah says you could sleep today, and we'll trust you that make sure that you will not sleep tomorrow, you'll be over Bal Yachal Devarim. So that's the Gemara's kasha. If there's an Isser, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to sleep today, kinaim lemocha, if you're going to sleep tomorrow, my bal yachal devarai. What kind of bal yachal devarai? If the Mishnah agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that you're not allowed to sleep today, so then day one he didn't sleep. So even if he would sleep today too, you won't be over bal yachal devarai. And so it must be elalav b'denayim, that the Mishnah allows you to sleep today. Okay, so if the Mishnah allows you to sleep today, so therefore, the Mishnah is telling you, you're permitted to sleep today, and we're making sure, I'm just warning you, that don't sleep tomorrow, because you'll be over by Yachel Devorah of today. And that's very geschmack, because since it's a retroactive Aveira, that's why the Mishnah changes the language and uses Bal Yachel Devorah. It doesn't say you're Asr, because the day number 2 is the conditional. So by making the condition, by keeping the condition, by sleeping tomorrow, you'll be over by Yachal Devari of the day before. So that's perfect sense on how to learn Pshat in the Mishnah. The only thing is, if you only learn Pshat in the Mishnah if you learn, like Rav Nachman, that you're permitted to sleep today. Alma Isa Denoim, you're permitted to sleep today. Utiyufta de Rav Yehuda, this will be a refutation against Rav Yehuda. And says the Gemara, Kikatani the Inayim. Kikatani the Inayim. Our Mishnah, you're right. According to Rav Yehuda, at the core, we tell him not to sleep. But if he did sleep, that's what the Mishnah is talking about. If you happen to sleep during the first day, then we tell you, be careful, don't sleep the next day because you're going to be over the Avera of what you slept on day number 1. So Mishnah is not telling you what the ideal thing is. The ideal situation is don't sleep the first day. But if you did sleep the first day, make sure not to sleep the second day because you'll be over by Yachal Devari. So that's how Rav Yehuda would learn Pshat in the Mishnah. Now, the Ravina learns an interesting Pshat in the Mishnah. We had one of the ways possibly to learn Pshat in the Mishnah is a man said, I swear, I make a neder, I'm not going to sleep. Right? Rabbi said, shani yoshin. So the Gemara says, is that a neder? Neder needs an object to take effect. And here, there's no object. Sleeping is an abstract object. So that was in the beginning, that was what we said on top. So Ravina Omar, Ravina says, L'oilam kiduktani. You really can learn Pshat in our Mishnah that a guy is saying, I make a neder that I'm not going to sleep. So why does the Mishnah say you get an Avera? Why does a neder take effect? My Balyachal midrabanan. The Balyachal means midrabanan, that you get an Avera midrabanan. That's what you have to learn Pshat. That Ravina holds that midrabanan said, no, you need to go to take a het and neder on something like that, even though it was abstract. Says, but the Mishnah uses an expression Bal Yachal Devarei, which is a pasuk in the Chumash. If it's also midrabanan, why do you use an expression Bal Yachal Devarei? Mi'ika Bayachal midrabanan. Is there something called Bayachal the midrabanan? If it's only a neder midrabanan, why does the Mishnah say that you're over Bal Yachal? Answers the Gemara. We find that in other brises, where the brisa will use an expression of Bayachal Devarei. Well, Hatanya, as we learned in a brisa, the Varim Hamutarim, the Vacherim Noagu Behen Isur. Let's say there are things that are generally permitted. Let's give an example. It's permitted to carry when there's an Erev, okay? Va'acherim Noagu Behen Isur. But you have a friend who says, even though there's an Erev in the neighborhood, I am not going to carry. So then, the brisa says, I atar ashar latirin b'fneim. You're not allowed to tell the guy and says, if you want to carry with the Erev, you don't need a het neder. You can just carry. But all this time, all these years, he was noyeg chumrah that he's not carrying with the Erev. So you cannot tell him to walk out without a het neder. Shene emar, because the pasuk says, L'yachal devarei. Don't violate your neder. Well, the truth is, the guy who has this chumrah never really took a neder. Nevertheless, we tell him that midrabanan you do have a neder, and in order to undo this minute tov, you have to go take a heter neder. So therefore, you shouldn't tell him not to that he goes free without the heter neder. Anyway, what the brisa says that this is a lo yachal devarei, but it's the rabbanan. It's a rabbanan. He never really said a neder. I'm never carrying with the erev. So, but nevertheless, we use the expression of lo yachal devarei. So Ravina says that's pshat in our Mishnah. A man took a neder on an abstract thing, on sleeping, and your Mishnah says midrabanan it is a neder, and therefore you need a heter neder because the pasuk says lo yachal devarei, and it's a word that came out of your mouth, even though it wasn't a neder. You should still be strict and consider it like a neder midrabanan. So now we learned in the Mishnah. Back to the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Nachum. Again, the machlokes is that if the Isser is today and day 1, and the condition is day 2, Rabbi Yehuda says don't sleep on day 1. So the Gemara is going to bring 2 more questions. So now we learned in the Mishnah. A man says to his wife, and this is permitted. A man could aser his beneder, his possessions on his wife. So he tells his wife, "Sha'at nehenes li ad hapesa. I aser you from having any benefit from my possession till the Yom Tov of Pesach, on condition on the condition that you never go to your father's house till Sukkot. So he's angry at his wife that she's always visiting her previous home. So he said, you're not permitted to have any benefit from my possessions until Pesach, on condition that you never go to your father's house until Sukkot. So the Mishnah says, if she went before Pesach, so she violated the condition, Asura ba'nosad Pesach. She's not allowed to benefit from any of his possessions till Pesach. That's pretty simple. But we have a diak from that Mishnah. If she went and kept the condition and went to her father's house before Pesach, Asura, then she's Asur. But if she doesn't go, then we don't say she's not permitted to benefit. As long as she doesn't go, she can benefit, because we trust that even if she benefits from his possession, she'll make sure not to go in order to retroactively violate Bal Yachal Devarei. So we see, not like Rabbi Yehuda, that you are permitted to take advantage today, and we trust that you'll make sure not to keep the condition to retroactively violate the neder. Amar Rav Abba said no. You could limp shot like this. If she kept the condition and went to her father's house before Pesach, Asura. If she benefited from the possessions, then she kept the condition and benefited from the possessions. So she did an Aveira, Veloike, and she gets Malchus. Or he gets Malchus. It's not clear. You have to look in the Ram, because he was the one that made the neder, and she was the one that violated the neder. So maybe he gets the Malchus. But the Ram learns that she gets the Malchus, because he made the neder. It takes effect on her, even though nothing came out of her mouth. And she gets the Malchus, a very fundamental machlokes over here. She gets the Malchus. Anyway, but loy halcha, if she didn't go to her father's house, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, Asura ba'alma, she's still ideally not supposed to benefit from her husband's possessions, on the chance that if she does benefit, she might violate, and she might violate that neder, because she's going to keep the conditions by going to her father's house. So that will, we just aligning itself with the position of Rabbi Yehuda. So if that's the case, the Gemara says, let's take a look at the end of that Mishnah. Achar ha-Pesach, after Pesach, that means after Pesach, she wants the benefit of enjoying he wants the benefit of enjoying her husband's possession. If she went after Pesach, in other words, she went to her husband's house after Pesach, the Baal Yachal Devarei, she did an Aveira of benefiting from her husband's possessions prior to Pesach. So here is a very clear thing. She kept the condition of going to her parents' home after Pesach, and yet she violated, and she got an Aveira because she benefited from the possession before Pesach. So if we agree with Rabbi Yehuda, we do not allow her to benefit before Pesach from her husband's possessions, then how could she violate Bayachal? She didn't benefit from her husband's possessions, and therefore, even if she went to her father's house after Pesach, but she never benefited from her husband's house before Pesach. Ella Peshita, must simple, the Ishane, she's permitted to benefit, and we trust her that she will make sure not to keep the condition and retroactively have an Avera. Alma Mishane, that we permit you to have benefit. And says the Gemara, we go to Yutes Vav Amud Beis, Kufted Rav Yehuda, this is a refutation of Yehuda, who says no. If the Isser is today on day one, and the condition is on day two, we do not allow you to benefit on day one, to do something on day one, because you may retroactively keep the condition on day two and retroactively get an Avera. So this Mishnah seems you're permitted to do so. Answers the Gemara a similar question. Kiktani, that Mishnah is talking about the Ishane, that if you did benefit, really, you're not supposed to benefit. But if you did benefit, then if you kept the condition after Pesach and went to the father's house, retroactively, you will get an Avera of Bal Yachal Devarim. Two more questions. The Gemara says, Tznan, we learned in the Mishnah. Again, same idea. Sha'at nehenesli adachab. The Isser is, I asked my wife, the guy asked his wife to have any benefit from his possessions till Sukkot, till next year's Sukkot. In Telchel Beisavich ad HaPesach. if you go to visit your father till Pesach, then you can never benefit until next Sukkot from my possessions. So the Mishnah says, if she did keep the condition from and went to her father's house before Pesach, so she kept the condition, now Asura Bahanosa Adachak, she cannot benefit from her husband till Sukkot. But Pesach, then after Pesach, she's permitted to go. She just has to make sure not to benefit anymore, because if she already went one time, she kept the condition, so she can continue to go, but she's never allowed to benefit from her husband's possession until Sukkot. So ends the Mishnah. So we can medayik from the Mishnah. Hocha, if she went Asura, then she's not permitted to benefit from her husband's possessions. Loy halcha, but if she's very careful to make sure not to keep the condition, so she doesn't visit her parents' home, then she's not prohibited from benefiting from her husband's possessions. So we see that the husband's possessions, which is the Isser, you're permitted to benefit, and we trust that you're not going to keep the condition. That's what this Mishnah implies. Rava says one teretz, same teretz like before. That really, even if she doesn't go, we still want her to be careful not to benefit from her husband's possessions. That's for sure, because if she does, there's a chance she's going to forget about the condition and and keep the condition, and then retroactively have an avera. But we say, if she did in fact go and she kept the condition, asura v'loike, if she benefited, she did an avera and she gets malchus. But if she did not go, right, as long as she didn't go to her parents' home, nevertheless, asura ba'alma, she's still prohibited to benefit from her husband's possessions, because Rabbi Yehuda is very scared that if we allow her to benefit from her husband's possession, she might later on keep the condition by going to her parents' home, and then retroactively get an avera of bayachal devarai from benefiting from her husband's possessions. Another last final question, which is very straightforward. This brisa seems very straightforward against Rabbi Yehuda. Listen to the brisa. Kikazu alai hayon. I said this piece of loaf of bread is also for me today. If I go to someplace else tomorrow, so the condition is being kept tomorrow. The isser is on the bread today. So the brisa says, "Achal, you can eat the bread. Just make sure you don't go tomorrow and keep the condition." So it's a clear brisa that says that you could eat the bread, you could eat, and we trust that you'll make sure not to keep the condition to retroactively violate the neder. So the Gemara says, that you're permitted to eat. Achal katani, b'diavad you ate. When you ate and you didn't care for Rabbi Yehuda's concern, then don't go tomorrow, because if you keep the condition, you'll be over your neder. Okay, but let's ask this from the end of the brisa. Brisa says, "Holach, if you did go, then if you do go, then you get an avera of bal yachal devarai. Mahalech law, but it doesn't say you're permitted to go." Wait a second. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if there's a situation, we tell him, don't eat the kikar today, so then he didn't violate the neder. Then why don't we tell him, Mahalik, you're permitted to go? We should tell him, Lachatchila, there's no avera, go, because if you keep what Rabbi Yehuda's concern is, don't eat the bread today. So if he doesn't eat the bread today, then he can walk tomorrow to his friend, to that place, because he's not going to violate any neder. He didn't eat anything today. The kasha Rabbi Yehuda, so this makes no sense to Rabbi Yehuda. It must be that we allow him to eat today. Amalach Rabbi Yehuda says, "Who didn't listen mahala?" Really, the second part of the Mishnah of this brisa should say you're permitted to go. If you kept my concern of not eating the bread today, then you're permitted to go tomorrow. But I did the Ketana Reishel Achal, since the beginning of the Mishnah brisa is teaching you a situation where you did eat, right? So it's like if you did something. The Mishnah is, we don't want to say you could eat, because you're not permitted to eat. You go only if you ate. Make sure you don't go tomorrow. Tana Sefer, so the brisa is continuing halach on that case in the beginning of the brisa, where you actually did eat and you violated Rabbi Yehuda's concern. Then, if you would go and keep the condition tomorrow, retroactively you get an avera of the bal yachal devarai because you ate the kikar today. Final thing that we'll learn tonight is just one more piece. We learned in our Mishnah, a person can say to his wife, I make a neder, we're not going to have any marital relation. You get an avera. If you have marital relations, then you get an avera bal yachal davari. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: how could a person aser marital relations on his wife? He's obligated midaraisa to have relations with his wife midaraisa. And furthermore, even another question is, how could this neder even at all take effect? That's you got to think about, because what is he saying? He's saying my body should be usher for me. Basically, he must be saying my body should be usher to having any relations to you. Okay, my body is usher to you, my wife. So then, how could it be? He's meshubed midaraisa diksiv sheirek susavay naso la yigra, and it's almost like I cannot make a neder to go over to somebody and tell somebody, oh, the money that you have in your bank is usher on you. It's his money; he can do whatever he wants with it. So same thing like this. My body, that the husband's body is dedicated for his wife, and therefore he cannot usher her on his body. So and therefore, because she owns his body for marital relations purposes, as it says in the Torah, you have to have marital relations with your wife. So how does this neder take effect? Answers the Gemara, really, he is saying an abstract thing. He's saying, he's saying, I cannot benefit from tashmish from you. So she's saying the benefit, the enjoyment of tashmish, of marital relations, I can aser on myself. Now, even though having the marital relations enjoyment is an abstract thing, midrabanan, the neder could be chal, and actually the midrabanan with neder would be chal, and it would uproot, and we say that we don't allow this husband to have marital relations with his wife. He doesn't want to enjoy tashmish. He doesn't want to enjoy marital relations. And how do you know you're permitted to do that? The Amar Rav Kahana says in the reverse situation, it's permitted for a woman to do that on her husband. A woman says to her husband, Tashmishi alaycha, I ask myself from having marital relations to you. Well, a woman's body is sort of like dedicated to her husband. So how could she ask her body on her husband? So in that case, we force her, we force her, and she should have marital relations with him. She has a responsibility to have marital relation with him. But what happens if she says, she says to him, I don't want the enjoyment of marital relations on me. Well, she's answering the enjoyment on herself. Then she can't have marital relation. We don't feed a person something that is prohibited on him. And since she put the neder on this enjoyment of tashmish, even though it's an abstract thing, midrabanan we say that this neder would be chal, because we just learned today that midrabanan neder could be chal on an abstract thing, and therefore she's not allowed to have tashmish with him. And same thing the opposite way. If he says to her, the enjoyment of marital relations should be usher to me, right? The enjoyment of marital relations should be usher to me. We say that's a good neder, and he's not allowed to have marital relations with his wife, even though it's a mitzvah. And you'll say mitzvahs are not for enjoyment. At the end of the day, he is enjoying marital relations. And if he says, I want to put a neder on that enjoyment, we don't allow him to do marital relations with his wife, and it's a neder midrabanan. And that answers the Mishnah. That's why the Mishnah always says harei zeh bal yachal davari, because it's only aser midrabanan. Okay.